Hello PEI, welcome to today's episode. We start off thanking our show producer and creator Mike Montague of Remax Charlottetown once again for a topic that really doesn't get much discussion on podcasts, or anyway for that matter. We're talking about real estate in the sense of one's final resting place. And if you have taken a drive in the country on PEI, you have noticed an abundance of them, randomly scattered throughout the island. Okay, let's dig in, or rather, let's get to it.
Let's get to it.
Because right now, beneath the soil of Prince Edward Island, there is a massive, completely invisible real estate portfolio.
Right.
And nobody's paying taxes on it.
No taxes, yeah.
And chances are, I mean, you probably drove past, 3 or 4 of these properties on your way to work today.
Great.
Without even noticing they were there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is a hidden landscape that anyone who has spent time on the island just knows intuitively.
Yeah.
Even if they've never consciously stopped to, analyze the actual mechanics of it, we are just so used to the visual of it that we completely stop questioning why the land is organized this way.
Right, exactly. Like, picture this scenario. I'm sure everyone listening has done this. You're driving down one of those really beautiful kind of winding rural back roads on the island.
Mm-hmm.
You come around a bend, and there's just a vast stretch of hayfield. And right there, sitting entirely alone under a little stand of spruce trees, is a tiny cluster of headstones.
Just sitting there.
Just sitting there.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no house nearby. There's no old stone wall or fence line that seems to explain, why they are in that exact seemingly random spot. It almost feels like they were just dropped out of the sky by mistake.
It does, which, well, that brings us to the core mission for this deep dive. Because we are treating this uniquely scattered landscape not just as some quirky local history, but really as Prince Edward Island's oldest, most permanent, and arguably most personal form of real estate record keeping.
I love that framing. Real estate record keeping.
Yeah, because the decisions about where people are buried and exactly how that land was allocated over time, it reveals an incredible amount about the agricultural mechanics of the island. Right. The evolution of land rights, and really how real estate has been held across 3 centuries.
It's essentially an open-air archive.
Exactly.
But one that's constructed out of stone and soil instead of, paper deeds in a filing cabinet.
Right.
And to understand the scattered plots we see today, we actually have to start by looking at the oldest existing plots, or, well, more accurately, we need to understand the ones that are entirely missing from the map.
Right, because we have to establish the difference between the visible history of the land and the invisible history, because they are not the same thing at all. And the gap between the two is entirely driven by property concepts and material culture.
Okay, so let's look at the visible side first.
Sure.
If we comb through the stone record that still physically exists today, 2 highly prominent early sites jump out. And they paint very, very different pictures of real estate.
They really do.
First, there's the old Protestant burying ground. People often call it the Elm Avenue Cemetery. And this one is smack in the middle of modern infrastructure. Like, it is at 260 University Avenue in Charlottetown.
It doesn't get more central than that.
It really doesn't. It sits on one of the busiest streets. It's widely considered the city's oldest cemetery. And there is an active restoration project going on right now. So it's urban, it's central, and it's highly visible.
Yeah, and you have to contrast that immediately with Long Pond Cemetery.
Right.
That one is just tucked away deep inside the PEI National Park in Stanhope.
Oh, I've walked out near there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you navigate off the Gulf Shore Highway near the Bubbling Springs Trail, you encounter this really quiet grassed clearing. It's ringed by a low stone dike featuring very plain sandstone markers nestled among the birch trees. It's a totally different vibe.
Okay, let's unpack this, because looking at Elm Avenue and Long Pond, we're seeing the dawn of permanent British-era settlement land use.
Yes.
But to me, history is sometimes like a computer where, like, the earliest files were saved on a temporary hard drive.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
And then a massive storm just wiped the drive completely clean.
Right.
But later generations, they backed up their land claims to the cloud. They literally carved it into stone, meaning it was designed from day one to be permanent.
That temporary hard drive analogy is the perfect way to understand the Acadian and French period of the island.
Oh, okay.
Back when PEI was known as Ile Saint-Jean. This was prior to the deportation of the 1750s.
Yeah.
During that era, the cultural priorities around real estate and burials across the Maritimes were fundamentally different from what came later.
How so?
Well, early Acadian graves were not marked with giant imported slabs of stone designed to declare, eternal ownership of a plot.
Yeah.
They were overwhelmingly marked with simple wooden crosses.
Because the entire theological and cultural emphasis was on masses being said for the soul of the departed, right?
Exactly.
Rather than erecting this massive permanent physical monument to claim the soil over their physical remains.
Right. It wasn't about a real estate claim. And we have to look at the mechanism of what happens next. Wood rots heavily in the damp maritime climate.
Oh, of course.
You combine that environmental reality with the deportation of the Acadians, where the British military forcibly removed the population.
Yeah.
Not only were the people taken away, but those temporary wooden markers were left behind with absolutely no one to maintain them or replace them.
Wow.
So over just a few short decades, that entire era of real estate footprint was literally erased from the surface of the island.
That is wild. So the truest, absolute oldest graves on PEI left no visible trace whatsoever.
Or none.
The topsoil simply absorbed the wooden crosses, and the land just reverted to looking untouched.
What's fascinating here is that the oldest visible cemetery and the oldest actual burial ground on PEI are two entirely different locations.
That is such a profound distinction.
It really is. That Acadian gap tells a huge sociological story about who possessed the resources, the cultural inclination, and really the political stability to leave a permanent footprint on the land.
I'm just picturing someone right now, walking through a pristine forest or a modern farmer plowing a field, completely unaware they are moving through a space that was once meticulously maintained and sacred to a whole community.
Right.
It completely shatters that illusion of untouched nature.
It does. It forces you to realize that an empty space on a map doesn't mean a lack of history.
Yeah.
It often just means a different type of material culture was used. But this transitions us directly into how the concept of permanent land ownership took root.
Okay.
The British brought a fundamentally different view of land, one that was deeply rooted in permanent private property rights. And a private property system requires permanent physical markers.
Which brings us all the way back to that opening visual, those isolated rural headstones standing in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
Because we aren't just looking at random graves. Here's where it gets really interesting, because we are looking at the stark dividing line between public communal ground and fiercely private ground.
Right. Let's look at the mechanics of early settlement. When you review the historical records, the landscape was dotted with explicitly labeled private family plots.
Yeah, and the sources highlight a prime case study for this. The William Pickering private family plot.
Oh yeah, he's a perfect example.
Let's really look at this guy. William Pickering lives from 1750 to 1837. He is a Royal Navy veteran, he's a farmer, and he is a United Empire loyalist.
Right.
Meaning he was part of that waves of people who remained loyal to the British Crown during the American Revolution, fled north, and were granted land as a reward for that loyalty.
And for a loyalist, land wasn't just dirt. It was everything.
Right.
It was their compensation, their identity, and their security. When you literally bleed for a government and they hand you a tract of wilderness in return, your connection to that specific geographic coordinate is incredibly intense.
I can imagine.
So burying your family on the home farm wasn't some eccentric fringe choice. It was the default mechanism of a newly settling agricultural society declaring its permanence.
But I have to challenge this narrative just a little bit.
Oh, go for it.
Because we have a huge tendency in historical retrospectives to romanticize pioneer life.
Oh, we definitely do.
Was burying your family on the farm truly a sentimental choice?
Yeah.
Keeping your loved ones close to the hearth, asserting your loyalist identity on the soil? Or was it just brutal rural practicality because it was 1837 and they literally had no other infrastructure to rely on?
It was overwhelmingly, brutally practical.
Really?
Oh, yeah. We have to totally strip away the modern sentimentality and look at the agricultural zoning.
Okay, lay it on me.
When early settlement families were clearing land by hand, swinging axes, and pulling stumps with horses.
Just back-breaking work.
Unbelievable work. Every single square foot of arable, fertile soil was a matter of life and death.
Right.
You did not waste good cropland on anything that didn't produce food.
So when a family member passed away, who actually dug the grave? And more importantly, how did they choose the spot?
The family or immediate neighbors dug it, and they strategically chose a rise, maybe a sandy hill or rocky corner of a field that was absolutely terrible for cultivation anyway.
Wait, so it was literally a zoning decision based on crop yields?
Yes.
They looked at the property and said, well, we can't grow potatoes in this rocky patch, so I guess this becomes the permanent family plot.
Precisely. It was a pragmatic, economic land use decision made by people whose entire existence depended on the viability of their soil.
Wow.
They were just maximizing the real estate.
That completely flips the script for me. It wasn't just poetry and sentiment. It was strict resource management.
Very strict.
But that practice didn't last forever. As we move through the 1800s, the sources show a massive shift in how the island managed this real estate.
Yeah, the transition happens mainly because of community density and the pooling of resources. As communities grew, churches were formally established.
Right.
Building a church meant creating a central community hub, and a key part of that infrastructure was a communal cemetery.
So this is where the denominational burial grounds pop up.
Exactly.
United the Presbyterian, the Catholic,
Yeah.
the Baptist plots.
Right, because instead of 50 individual families sacrificing 50 corners of their own private farms, the community pooled its funds to secure one centralized parish cemetery.
Which is just way more efficient.
Exactly. The landscape shifted from private agricultural pragmatism to communal religious organization.
Which means, and I'm just connecting these dots right now,
Yeah.
if the trend moved toward community church plots in the 1800s, then those tiny, isolated little graveyards we spot from the highway today under the spruce trees, those aren't just random historical anomalies. They are the ghosts of farmhouses that no longer exist.
Ghost farmhouses is a brilliant term for it.
I mean, the family eventually moved on, or they sold the land to a larger agricultural conglomerate,
Right.
or the wooden farmhouse simply rotted, fell in on itself, and was cleared away. The barn was dismantled, the fence line was plowed under.
But the stone stayed.
Exactly. Because they put imported stone deep into the ground, the cemetery stayed put. The rocky corner of the field where they buried the Royal Navy veteran in 1837 is still there, holding its ground while the entire world changed around it.
It serves as the only surviving architectural footprint of that specific family's tenure on that land.
It's kind of haunting when you think about it.
It really is. Now let's look at the legal mechanics, because it is crucial to clarify how much real estate law has changed since then.
Oh, for sure.
Because if someone listening is getting ideas about modern, off-grid living and creating their own private plot, the barriers to entry today are immense.
Oh, so I can't just designate my backyard today because the soil is a bit too rocky for my tomato plants.
Not even close. Today, private land burial in Canada is an incredibly complex provincial and municipal legal matter.
I figured as much.
You are dealing with strict zoning laws and public health regulations. Generally, to bury on private land, that specific parcel has to be formally established and surveyed as a recognized cemetery.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that involves getting consent from local authorities, undergoing zoning changes, and meeting really strict environmental safety standards regarding the water table.
That's a lot of red tape.
It's a highly involved legal process. It is no longer just a matter of picking a spot on the back 40 and digging.
So we've traced this evolution from families burying loved ones on their own poor quality cropland to this 19th century consolidation into tiny parish plots.
Right.
And because of this very specific historical pipeline, PEI has been left with this totally unique, highly dense real estate landscape.
Unbelievably dense.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what does this specific type of real estate look like today in practical financial terms?
Well, the sheer scale of this inherited landscape is staggering. There is actually no single, clean, citable government registry that perfectly counts PEI's total active cemeteries.
Wait, really? No single list?
No, we have to rely on estimates. Because the island didn't just build 2 or 3 massive corporate municipal facilities, but instead relies on this sprawling historical network of church and family grounds.
Right.
So the density of distinct properties is unusually high relative to the island's small geographic size.
How many distinct properties are we talking about across the province?
When you start counting every rural 1 or 2 acre parish plot scattered from tip to tip, the number easily pushes into the hundreds.
Wow.
Hundreds of distinct, legally protected parcels of land dedicated solely to this one purpose, requiring constant maintenance.
That is a massive amount of real estate locked out of any other development.
Huge.
And it brings up the dollars and cents of it all, because real estate is never free, even after the original owner is gone.
Very true.
Let's look at the modern financial reality of acquiring this ground. Based on the source data, The plot fees alone on PEI generally run anywhere from $500 to $5,000.
And we need to explain what that fee actually covers.
Please do.
That $5,000 is often just for the right to the earth itself.
Exactly. I mean, why does a standard 4x8 patch of dirt cost up to $5,000? It's not just the soil.
No, it comes down to perpetual care funds and the scarcity of approved municipal land. When you buy a plot, a portion of that money goes into a legally mandated trust fund.
Okay.
The interest from that fund is supposed to pay for the groundskeeping, the mowing, the leveling, the tree maintenance in perpetuity.
Forever.
Forever. But with modern inflation and the rising cost of landscaping labor, those funds are constantly stretched thin.
Plus, you have to factor in the mechanical reality of the space.
Yeah.
It's an additional $1,500 to $2,500 just for grave space preparation, the marker installation, and the opening and closing costs.
Right, because opening a plot today isn't a family member with a shovel.
No.
It requires heavy machinery, specialized concrete vaults to prevent the ground from collapsing over time, and a whole crew to manage the liability.
So when you combine the plot fee, the opening costs, and standard funeral services, a full traditional burial on PEI is estimated to be around $9,000 or even more.
Yeah, easily.
I'm looking at these numbers and I have to ask, are we literally pricing ourselves out of physical history? Is the ghost farmhouse tradition, or even the parish plot tradition, dying simply because of modern real estate inflation?
The economics are absolutely forcing a cultural shift. Consider the alternative. Direct cremation without a formal service can run under $1,000 in some parts of PEI.
That is a staggering contrast. $9,000 to maintain the tradition of taking up a physical permanent plot of real estate versus under $1,000 for a process that requires no permanent land at all.
It forces modern islanders into a choice between historical continuity and harsh economic reality.
Yeah.
For 3 centuries, securing a permanent plot of island soil was the default conclusion of life lived here. You bought land, you farmed land, you became part of the land.
Right.
But as the cost of that ground rises astronomically, we are seeing a fundamental shift in how the landscape is utilized by the current generation.
Which means in 50 years, the real estate footprint of this current generation will look entirely different from William Pickering's generation.
The physical record is shrinking, even as the population grows.
So what does this all mean? We started out looking at these little fenced-in squares of land scattered across the countryside.
Yeah.
Or these isolated headstones in a hayfield, wondering why they were there.
Right.
And what we've unpacked is that these small graveyards, whether they are sitting quietly behind a rural denominational church or standing completely alone as the ghost of a pioneer farmhouse, they're arguably the oldest continuous real estate record the island possesses.
They are the ultimate testament to the durability of a land claim. Long after a property deed changes hands, long after a farmhouse is torn down and plowed over, long after a family name completely disappears from a rural route's mailboxes, the cemetery is the one piece of real estate that stays exactly where it was placed.
The zoning hold.
The zoning holds. To truly understand the island is to understand how islanders relate to their land right up to the very end of their time on it, and how they secure it for the centuries that follow.
It completely changes how you look out the window on a long drive.
It really does.
Well, we want to close out by thanking our show producer and creator, Mike Montague of RE/MAX Charlottetown, once again, for prompting this exploration and sending us down this incredibly fascinating path into the oldest real estate on the island.
This raises an important question for anyone listening, though.
What that?
If these private plots, these ghost farmhouses, truly outlast the very families who created them, whose responsibility is it to remember the stories attached to that land?
Oh, wow.
When those sandstone markers eventually weather completely smooth from the blowing maritime wind and the names vanish entirely, does the land simply revert to nature like the Acadian wooden crosses?
That's a great question.
Or does a plot of earth somehow hold on to its history forever, even when no one is left to read it?